guys. Hello, everyone. We are a couple minutes behind because it's Mercury retrograde and everything always. Even without Mercury retrograde, it becomes a real deal.
Yep.
So it is what it is now. So let's get started here. I'm going to get our stuff going. This Facebook Live obviously is like pre-show a little bit. We've got Nell here. Hey. And I'm going to, let's just go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are you good, Rick? Can we go with you here? Okay, cool. So let me remember how to do this. And
I feel honored.
okay.
Ooh, Native American music. Nice.
We gotta have her not talk.
Here we go.
Man. They're on.
Okay, why can't I hear anything? I wonder if it's playing on the radio because it's not playing here. I'm gonna stop it. Sorry, you guys. You're seeing it happen live and all messed up. Speakers up. Sorry. Okay. So why can't I hear it on this thing, Rick? What's going on, buddy? That's it.
Is it selected up here for the board MX?
Built-in mic.
No, you don't want built-in mic. You want MX.
I don't see it.
Oh. Okay. Sorry
See
about
you guys? This is how it happens. This is how it happens.
Oh, okay. Close Audacity.
Oh, Lord, really?
Just for a second. You're going to reopen it. Close the whole program.
Oh. Here? Close it? Or like here?
Quit.
Quit Audacity?
Yeah.
You guys, help me. Seriously.
We've been here
Yeah.
for an hour.
Oh, don't save this before you close
Can I
it.
cancel it?
Yeah,
Okay.
and just quit.
Quit Audacity. Oh, no. Just no. Oh, God damn it. Okay.
Mercury is really in retrograde.
I'm telling you, it's not even a joke. Like, it really is not
Okay,
happening.
now start it again. Now you should be able
Grab
to
here, I was
select
watching.
this. And right here, MGXE.
Okay.
Yeah,
There's a lot of dead air. You might want to
They're
Oh, is there
going.
dead air? Oops. That's not good. Let me just push play real quick while we could do this. Okay. So, yeah, what happened is the music wasn't playing when we did it, and so we had to do something else. Let's open it up again, I guess. And then I can find my intro here. Thank you for being patient, you guys. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Okay. So, now we should be able to hear it. Fingers crossed, people. Fingers crossed. Okay, so we're going to stop it here. Oh my gosh, it recorded that whole thing. I'm going to have to come in here, and I'm going to have to do the whole thing again.
You're so patient.
I'm not. I'm super not. Okay, here we go.
Eastworks Independent Community Radio, also streaming online at kepw.org.
Now we gather here on Universal this time, this particular time, to listen to the 36 black notes of the piano. There's 36 black notes and 52 white notes. We don't need to eliminate nothing, but we're going to just hear the black notes at this time, if you don't mind.
You're listening to Black Girl from Eugene with Aisha.
Good morning, everyone. Aisha here, back on the scene. We're going to get straight to it because we all got all kinds of stuff to say, and we're behind technical difficulties, and the lovely Mercury retrograde right on our back.
Yeah.
And we're very aware of these things, right? So anyway, we are going to start off our show. This show is White Folks in Black Spaces Part 2. We got a lot of feedback,
Yep.
good and bad. My guest here, Nell Deligio, okay, and some may know her as Nell Sequoia. She is here with me, and I want to say,
There's nothing.
there's nothing.
Mm.
Why is there nothing? I don't know. Okay, they're going to deal with that. So, we're going to start talking about the idea that we wanted to have, it says that it's recording for 5 minutes. We want to have this conversation again, and actually additionally. We're not going to start talking about a whole bunch of what already was covered. The video is up on on my podcast. It's here on Facebook if you want to see it. But this triggered a lot of people.
It did.
We got a lot of feedback, both positive and negative. So we want to jump right into it,
Yeah.
right? And I'm super happy and I'm loving that Nell is willing to come back again and again and again until we get this right. Yeah. I want people to understand how invaluable it is for a Black person here, especially in the Pacific Northwest. And I'm not speaking for everyone across the country. I'm not speaking for Black folks' experiences anywhere else but here in my own. This is my personal stuff. I actually really appreciate a white person who has done more work than I would be able to even quantify. You know what I mean? Because there's lots of things that you intentionally went out to learn that I have learned through experience. I didn't actually intentionally go out to learn these things. You actually have done that. And we know value and we know when someone is real.
Yeah.
And someone is really trying to earnestly do that. So I welcome you to my space all of the time. I want to say that because we're talking about white folks in Black spaces, and this space is for us to be real. And I want you and everyone, I want you to really understand that, like, you're welcome here because I see you as a true ally and alliance in this situation, and you really understand it in a way, of course, like you always say, it's academic because you could never live it, which, yes, that's true. But that effort for your lifelong learning is seen by me. And so you're always welcome to come here and talk about it. And personally, I think white folks need to hear the truth from other white people. And so, so let's start there.
Aw, I'm honored to be here.
Oh,
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So, okay, I want you guys to know on Facebook, you guys are like on my phone at this point, and I am going to have a hard time seeing what you're saying just because you're so little. We had to go from our laptop to the phone. So, please don't feel slighted if we don't address you directly. I probably will after the show if I can't see you then. So, okay, so let's get started. We want to talk about,
the fallout.
The fallout.
Or just, yeah.
No, it was a fallout.
There was some fallout.
There was some
Definitely.
fallout.
We had some positive. I had a lot of positive
feedback.
reactions as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Okay.
both happened.
So this is what was surprising to me. What you told me was that the most people who directly IM'd you or DM'd you or whatever were men.
Yep.
Because from white men.
Yeah.
From white men. Men do not talk to me, period, about this. Like, they will not approach me about this at all.
Yeah.
And most women who do approach me are in agreement. I hardly ever get people who are pushing back.
Right.
That does not mean they don't have stuff to say to me that they want to say.
Yeah.
But they definitely aren't saying what they should be saying.
Right. Maybe
guess.
those are the silent observers that we were talking about. I was
yes.
mentioning that I've had some people contact me who said they saw comments that were made or conversations that we were having in the comments section under a video I posted of the last episode of Black Girl from Eugene with Raja, but didn't like or comment on it. So it was like, I had this idea, I know this happens, that people just are observing but not participating. But
right.
Yeah, we touched on that earlier.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, like, so the conversation you heard with Raja and I, and Raja was the podcast that I did last week.
Yeah.
Or the week. No, I wasn't here last week. I was sick as a dog. 2 weeks ago. And so if you haven't heard or watched that, please go on and watch that. She makes, especially the second half of our show, makes some very deep observations. So now you were saying, say that again. I'm sorry. Like, say.
Oh, I was just saying that so I had a lot of people contact me directly, and then there were also some people who I talked to who mentioned seeing these interactions and feedback, but not commenting or liking it. So it was like this invisible audience.
Right.
That I'm imagining, like, we don't know how many people saw it or had things to say, like how you're saying that men don't talk to you about it.
Right.
Maybe they're not comfortable crossing over and actually interacting or communicating, but
Right.
they're hearing it anyway, so that's interesting.
They're
to
watching
me.
it from a
Yeah,
distance, right?
yeah.
So you got these DMs, and we actually had this long thread of a guy that which is really funny, is that we both know from West African dance.
I know, it's not weird.
It's weird, and he's a white dude, and I don't know him at all, really. I just know him in class, and you don't really know him, but you befriended him on Facebook for whatever. You know, just kind of like, I know you.
Class. It was from class.
Yeah.
He requested to be my friend, and
And that's how that happens.
Yeah, we don't have any relationship outside of that.
Yeah, and so he thought it would be a good idea to basically challenge Nell about her racism. Was that what it was?
Well, so it was the post. I reposted the video of you and Raja, and I had written a caption for it that said it was crucial information for white people that are participating in African music and dance.
Right.
And it's that you guys touched on some really important points that I felt like all white people should hear.
Mm-hmm.
And so he responded. It was hard for me to pinpoint what exactly he was responding to, but
Right.
in his comment, he sort of recapped spiritual bypassing
Right.
from the perspective of somebody who's doing that and unaware of it.
Yeah.
That's the way I saw it.
It was super funny because he
Yeah.
was like classically showing everything we had talked about
Right. Exactly.
in the podcast.
Yeah.
He like classically laid it
It was
out
a perfect
exactly.
example.
Yes, of someone who didn't get it.
Mhm.
But what was interesting about this is that he continued to talk about how we didn't get it.
Right.
And that he felt, I mean, I guess he didn't say the words that he felt persecuted, but it was like basically that he did. And
Yeah.
he did the very typical white thing to do, is like, when I was a white kid and I lived around black people, I got beat up because I was different. So I know
Right.
oppression too.
Right.
And of course I was like, I'm really sorry for your experience.
Mhm.
That is not oppression.
Right.
You know,
It's not the same.
it's not the same at all. It has no structural value to that.
No.
It's unfortunate, and I'm sorry that was your experience. But not the same.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
say no. It's different. Absolutely different.
Yeah.
And he really felt like attacked. And I tried to break it down where I was like, the feeling that he was observing, like the feeling that he was exuding was that his power was being taken away from him.
Right.
His voice was not being heard.
Exactly.
And yeah, and I was like, as a white man, and these are two women and a black woman I'm like explaining it, which I don't have to do. Or defending myself. I actually said that to
Right.
him. I said, you know what? I feel like you're having me put a position of defense.
Okay, I missed that. So it got deleted, all of it, before I was able to even see that part.
Oh,
of the
really?
exchange. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had like responded to him for the second time. Then I went to work, and then by the time I got off and went back to look at it, it was all gone.
Yes.
He had deleted his initial comment, which deleted all of our responses.
Right.
I think that's what happened.
I think it's
I've
because
tried to figure it out, but it was.
I don't know
gone.
why it took all of ours. Maybe
Right?
because we were on his thread.
I
Like
think
that's
what it is.
Yeah, and then because he deleted you, it just took all of his away. Which was like, this is exactly what we're talking about, and why
Right.
on my show that like we want to make it very clear that this is the reality of inclusion
Right.
and diversity. Like, that guy does not come across racist. He dances in West African dance classes. He probably has had a black girlfriend. You know, all these things. Like, I think, matter of fact, he did have. Doesn't he have like a kid that he was with that was Asian?
Yeah,
And
he has
so
two kids.
right. So I mean, I don't know. I'm not gonna get into his life. I don't know that man, but I do want to just show what that was like. We at no
Right.
point were we degrading him or belittling him. He was really offended by our stance on. What was our stance? We didn't even have. We
I
weren't
think
even.
he was specifically talking about spiritual bypassing, because the way he framed the initial comment was he was talking about how he tries to operate on a higher consciousness level, where
Right.
he's trying to.
Where he doesn't see
all
any-
people are equal
right, I forgot.
and like, yeah.
Yeah, he
You
doesn't
know.
see color
Yeah, that
or
type of
anything.
thing. Or just like that. if we're operating from love, we're not buying into this collective consciousness of racism and that race matters. He didn't say those words, but like,
Right.
and that I have a big issue with.
Go for
Like-
it, girl. This is why you are here.
Well, I
Talk
mean,
about
the
it.
whole thing, and I don't really want to like drag him on the
No,
radio.
'cause honestly,
That's not
it's
what
not
I'm trying to
him.
do. Yeah,
It's
I
not
think
him.
it's just
This is a bigger picture.
right. It's just a really good example of a pattern.
Right.
Of, I mean, we can call it white fragility, which I think is a relatively new term, but that's what it seems like to me. Is
Yeah.
just this, maybe not inability, but a discomfort with having these issues addressed, and then this immediate desire to defend oneself when you're not being attacked personally by this information,
Right.
but because it's touching something inside white people that makes them feel uncomfortable with noticing their race and their privilege,
Right.
they're gonna come back and do things like what he did. And yeah, there's so many layers to that.
There's so
It's
many
very
layers.
complex.
There's so many layers to that.
Yeah.
And I think that just what you just said is like understanding that you got touched in a defensive way.
Right.
That right there in that space, excuse me, right there in that space is where the racism or the discrimination or the prejudice or the bias is lying.
Right.
And of course it's painful to be seen
Yes.
when you're not proud of that piece,
Right.
or that you try actively to bypass it,
Mhm.
you know, and pretend it's not there, and
Yes.
just be like, I love everyone, I don't see
Right.
color, and all of a sudden that's you're erasing all of the experiences you're even having
Right.
with being uncomfortable.
Right.
So then therefore you take away all the opportunity
Mm-hmm.
to learn and to
Yes.
actually genuinely connect to somebody who's different than you. It doesn't
Right.
even have to be about race. It's just the difference that's
Right.
making you uncomfortable.
Yes.
Right? So it's interesting. So we were talking about like I said, white people in black spaces, and it got very complicated
Mhm.
because that topic is huge,
Mhm.
and it's just something that I think here in Eugene, here in the Pacific Northwest, black folks have a really hard time building community.
Right.
You know, it's been a continuous and historical pressure to keep us separated and very much dispersed amongst. I mean, we don't know that the other person is even here when there could be hundreds of us or thousands. I don't even want to say thousands of us, because I've never seen thousands of black folks here. Yeah, unless it's a sporting event and they're coming from somewhere else. But like here, so hundreds of us don't know that the other are here, and it's very systematically done. It's very. I mean, it's always been this way. Oppression in Oregon specifically is not old. Like we're still. I mean, as early as the 70s, like we had sundown laws here in the 70s.
I mean, there still are some
Right.
in Oregon.
Yeah, on the Constitution.
Yeah, not that they're enforced,
But they're there.
Yeah.
They haven't been,
Right.
taken away.
Right.
So all I'm saying is to say that, like, having black spaces in Oregon, in the Pacific Northwest, for black folks is very hard to accomplish.
Right.
And what's interesting is that all the people here in the Pacific Northwest are known, like, through the United States. We're hippies, we're liberals, we're all of these things. But the truth of it is that it only, who does that really count for? Because it's not for us. It's not for
No.
black folks. That liberal, we want everyone to see their potential. We want everyone to be happy and grow to your light and
Right.
come to your spiritual whatever.
Right.
It doesn't apply to us needing our own space, because
Right.
that is not, it's not valued.
Yeah, and that can translate to erasure and just like this idea that everyone is one, so that's what we're going to focus on, rather than the reality of what we're living in this country today.
Exactly. And the truth of it is that we, with having it be historical and the context, if you have to try to take that context away, it's a fool's errand. You can't separate it.
Right.
You can't
Well, then you're
separate
not
it.
living in reality. I
No.
mean, that's all in your imagination.
It's all-
And for white people, it may be easier to do that because we don't have to think about race or confront these issues. Nobody's forcing us to do that.
So
It's
that
not
goes-
thrown in our faces. So
Right.
it has to be a choice for us to try to unlearn these things that have been taught to us since birth.
And that goes back to what you were saying earlier today. Was like when black folks talk to you about their pain. It's interesting. Someone believe them. I'm sorry, I interrupted
Yes.
my own self. Like when someone talks to you about their pain or their discomfort or their oppression, it's not your job to decide how much it's hurting, how much it's oppressing, how much it
or
doesn't
whether
count.
it's racism or not.
Right, like
ooh.
what is it? I posted that little picture. It's like, why is it? What's even racist about that? Or something like that. And it's like white proverb. It's like it's a proverb. It's
How is that racist?
Yeah, that's what it is. How is that racist? So the thing is that like we're telling you is us speaking our
Right.
truth,
Right.
and that in that moment, you're getting a very bird's eye view of what's happening. So in that space, you can stop yourself. Because if that person is even willing to go, you know what, you're being racist right now, or that's not comfortable, they're actually allowing an opening.
Right. Yes.
That's an opening right there. It can be a discussion or it cannot be.
Right.
But it's an opening. So it takes an opportunity for you to take it, right?
And to even do that is a big deal, like, because of there's so much pushback against even speaking about racism if you're any race, but especially if you're black, to a white person.
Right.
The chances that you're going to be heard, I mean, I'm just speaking from like what I've seen.
Yeah.
I'm not black and I haven't done that, but
Right.
like, are very low that they're
Yeah.
even going to be able to take that in.
Yeah.
And like you said, see it as an open door rather than a chance to defend themselves or go on some diatribe, some intellectual thing about racism and what it is and what it's not, rather than just taking that, like you said, as an opportunity to maybe see where inside ourselves we might not be seeing something clearly because of the racial situation and the way we grew up as white people.
So you said that you had people come into your DM that were men across the country.
Yeah.
Tell us about that a little bit more.
So hi.
Hi. We got a laptop up over here to see. Are we being recorded on 2 different ones now? Oh.
So
Wow.
bring up your
fancy.
Facebook page.
Oh, I won't be able to do it right now because we're on it.
Okay.
Let me see. Hold on.
No, I mean it's underneath. This is the OBS software.
Sorry, we're trying to get this going. I am being recorded, but you know what? The real problem is that it's not on the radio right now.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, okay.
I think you have to restart your
Sorry, guys.
your G stream in there because I think it defaulted. It clicked off when you didn't go on.
Oh, geez.
So I think that's what's stopping it from recording over there.
Oh, okay. Well,
So you have to
it's a lot.
find yourself again.
It's a lot going on.
Oh, this is behind too. There's a lag.
Yeah, it is a lag, so don't even look at it because it's just going to be
really
annoying.
confusing.
Yeah. So talk to them about the
Sure.
DM. I'm sorry, guys. We're still here, but
Yeah.
go ahead and talk to them about the DM and because there's men across the country. Men. I think it's interesting that it was men.
I do too.
Yeah,
I do too.
and they were across. Were they all across country or?
Let's see. Yeah, actually, I mean, trying to
I like that
think.
they're listening.
Yeah, I do too. I appreciate that.
I appreciate
And
you
they
guys.
weren't universally white either. I mean, I've had a lot of people. So
Yeah.
I was just noticing that was something interesting to me, that white men have stuff to say about this to me. Like, I guess overall, after the podcast we did, the episode.
There you go. Now you're on.
Okay.
It's just
Now
been-
we're on air. Thank you. Hi.
Yeah, thank
Sorry.
It's just been a relief to me, honestly, to have people coming towards me to speak about these issues, because I feel like I've spent a lot of my life trying to talk to people about it, white people, and not getting anywhere. Like, I mean, I've had a lot of good conversations, but so many where I tried to bring things up and they just don't want to talk about it, or all kinds of
I'm super involved.
representations of white fragility showed up. So, like, even if the things that I've gotten in the last
give them an
couple
example
weeks,
of this, because I think people
Yeah.
say it and they don't know that they're being fragile or that they're
Right.
being in that space. They're like, I'm just talking. It's like,
right. Oh,
okay.
sorry.
So like, I don't think that people really understand what they're doing when
Right.
they do it. So give some examples of how that came across, because I don't want to sound like, the picky black person here.
Right.
For people that get it. I don't want it. I want it to be clear. It sounds like to me that it was the same thing over and over again, and people keep presenting themselves in this way that
Yeah.
they just aren't connecting
Right.
their behavior to their
Right.
privilege, to their perspective.
Yes.
Like, it's not all connecting together.
Yeah, so like there's just, I feel like from what I could see, there are some underlying beliefs that were unexamined that are manifesting themselves in the way that racism is talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I mean, I could talk about specific things that were said, but I also just think, I don't know how much I want to get into that, because I feel like some of it would just be feeding into those beliefs that are unhelpful.
Right.
I mean, there was a factor of like pointing out that what you are saying in your podcast doesn't represent all Black people, which is something that you've said directly in your podcast. So it's like maybe not, it's showing that they're not listening to what's actually being said, and instead just bringing up.
Yeah, well, I think that the thing that when you were telling me about it, the thing that caught my eye, what caught my attention was that, like, in the whole scheme of things, to say, like, well, it's not all Black people, that's another excuse to not understand it, as if I'm not relevant, as if this experience that we're living here is not relevant.
And as if we're saying that, like, or anybody that's speaking up about this is assuming that.
Right.
Like,
it's not about that.
Yeah.
We're not competing. And we're not comparing. And I want people to understand that, like, if I'm saying my truth here in this space, about 1,000 other people believe the same thing. And it's not actually something that I'm even trying to quantify or qualify.
Right.
And I don't want to take the time here to have that discussion about my purpose in why I do what I do, because I've done that 1,000 times over. But I want people to understand who are listening to this about the Black experience across the United States. Obviously, there's cultural differences, just like white folks. White folks from the South aren't the same from the white folks from the Northwest or Northeast. You know what I mean? Black folks aren't the same either culturally. Like, I'm culturally more white here because I live in a white culture, right? But living in the United States as a Black person is universal. The issues that we have, we can go across the board and be universal, and that is where when we have the universal conversation of privilege and fragility, it doesn't matter where you are. If you're within these borders of the United States, it's all the same. You know what I mean? So that's what I want people to understand. Like, I always talk about, like, inclusivity being very much like an idea and super not a reality. Right. Because if it was a reality, you wouldn't have shows like this.
Yes.
Where we can actually talk about our truth. Right. Things that we actually can't say.
To throw around.
Right. Yeah. It's super a term. It's just a term. Like, nobody's actually doing the work to be inclusive.
And that's like what you were saying earlier that I wanted to bring up too, about white faces representing African culture and African dance on stage, where people are talking about inclusion, but then when it's actually coming into practice, that's not happening, like you're saying right now.
It's true.
But yeah, like, I wanted to actually hear from you about how that impacts you as a Black person, seeing white people performing African dance, if you're willing to go there.
I'm on the radio, you cannot see my face. But you can see my face on Facebook. Yeah. No, it's really, and on YouTube. So, okay, so this is the thing. I brought this up the last time we talked about it, and I had this discussion with my dad, and he was like, you wouldn't be so bothered if they were good, right? And I was like, maybe. But there's a bigger picture to this. It's like, we all scream representation matters. We're like, representation matters. We got to get the Black doll with the curly hair, and we got to get the African doll with the tribal stuff on, and we have to do all this stuff, and we make sure there's native dolls and like indigenous, and then when it comes down to representing their culture, we got white women and men performing. Like, and so when you talk about representation, like, because I've been involved directly, I know the difference, right? And I know that the people I've worked with, the Africans from different countries in Africa, have their reasons of why they do that. And generally it's financial. And they also defend themselves saying it's not even African culture that we're showing. However, we don't know that. Right. And when you come to the United States and you see African men and you see the drums and you see the dances that we've never seen, and we just automatically go, this is what the culture is. And most people who've traveled back and forth will say, actually, it's really not that. We don't know that. So the representation that's being shown is irresponsible and it's dangerous, and it really shows a power struggle and a power dynamic within a culture that Black folks are trying to understand as a linkage to our past. It doesn't mean that we even have
that piece is important.
It's like we don't collectively know exactly where we come from that way. But we do know it's from Africa, and we do know the countries there resonate within our bodies, and we do know we have that to claim. Like, it's complicated when white folks want to bring in the power dynamic of, like, well, the Africans said that we could, when the Africans are not playing within the racial dynamic in which we are here in the United States. Culturally, they are different. Culturally, they're not Black. American Black, you know? And I don't think American blacks are trying to be culturally African. I think that we are trying to gravitate towards something that resonates with our past, with our historical context, right?
Yeah.
And I think the blockage of having white folks have the access due to financial gain, due to just the lack of taking the time to find people who are brown, who will do the dances, who can do the dances, who are interested in it.
Right.
But they just want to quickly have that, we want to appreciate your culture. We're just appreciating it. We just love it so much. We just want to make sure everyone can see it, no matter how it looks, right? Like no matter what it looks like. And that's damaging on so many levels, spiritually, mentally, physically. It just doesn't work. And to be a white person in the United States and to try to separate Africans and black folks, and knowing that on the surface, unfortunately, when you're representing that culture and you're taking it here, you're still working within this context, within the United States context, racial context.
Yeah.
You're a white woman and you know what's here, right? So then, but you're going to reach over to Africa and go, well, this is different. I'm going to bring it over here like it doesn't matter. Africans will come over here and say, oh, we're not black. You're not black. And we understand that you're not black. But when that police car pulls us over, you're as black as I am. So that racial dynamic is still in play when they're up on stage, dressed in African garb, kind of, some rendition of it, and dancing their dances. And then there's black women in the crowd who could do the same thing, who are being looked over by those white women. I'm not talking about the Africans who are looking them over, because that's a whole nother conversation about their financial need and what they are doing for their culture, and for not for their culture, but for their families, and why they prefer to use white women in those scenarios versus black. And I'm saying prefer. I'm not an African man. I'm not an African teacher. Their choices. I know plenty. Actually, I know 2 or 3 African teachers who have talked to me personally and was like, I would much rather it be a dance floor full of black women, but they're not here and they're not interested. And I mean, that could be true. They go back to the East Coast and they're dancing. They will prefer black women to do the dancing. I'm just saying, when I'm here and I'm looking at it, that's what I'm feeling. I'm feeling like, could we do better?
That's what I wanted to know.
What are we representing here? What does that look like? What is this? What is this? And to talk to my dad about like whether they're talented or not, it may not hurt as much, because it's like, wow, maybe they studied. Maybe they did the work. That sounds great. That feels a little better. You know what I mean? It's like, but it's a whole stage full of white women.
We're not just talking about one white person. We're talking about everyone on stage, almost.
You got a token African here and there who plays the drums, who keeps the rhythm, who keeps it, together. But the rest is all white. I don't know.
I don't either.
And I know white musicians. My ex-husband to be one of them, is extremely talented. And Africans will choose him over other Africans. You know what I mean? Because he studied so hard. And he had the talent of the drummer, period. And then he was interested in being a good drummer. You know what I mean? But even then, he's not invested in the culture. You know what I mean? Like, he's not even invested in the culture. And
it's a musical thing.
It's just playing music. So that goes to our conversation about appreciation and appropriation.
That's what I was thinking about.
So where were you going to go with that?
Well, okay, so back to the DMs and emails that I've gotten. Something that came up that is in regards to that was talking about cultural appreciation, where I had somebody tell me that because I've studied African dance and music for so much of my life, that it's my culture. And I just wanted to say right now that is not how I feel. I just feel like that doesn't translate for me. It doesn't have to belong to me in any way. I don't have to have a claim to it or capitalize off of it by teaching it. None of that feels in integrity to me. So like, no matter how much time I devoted to it or how much I feel a deep connection to it internally, it's still not mine. And I'm not here to take anything. All I want is to enjoy it in a respectful way. So if I'm allowed to.
So what do you say to the people who are like, I am trying to, like, if we didn't do it, it wouldn't be here?
That part, yes. So I've thought about that comment a lot, honestly, because I've heard it
I mean, that's what happened in the
Yes.
Pacific Northwest. Like, there's no black people here.
And
There's no
that
Africans.
is
There's no. What
no.
would we
I
do?
would say
We have to bring
short
it.
answer, no, you don't.
Yeah.
I think, like, if you think it needs to be here, then bring an African person here, or bring black people here who know it and want people to
Right.
share that culture in a good way. Like, I don't think that there's any place for white people to be stepping into that role, honestly,
Right.
as transmitting that culture, because it's not ours, and white people have already taken so much from
Yeah.
Africa and continue to.
I even have an issue sometimes with the idea, like, we have people here who, like, sponsor
Right.
Africans that come
Well,
through.
yeah, you better not be making money off that yourself. either.
Right.
I left that part out.
Yes.
It all needs to go to the artist.
That's it. All of it, 100%. And the issue of being like that, I feel like what white folks have struggled with is the control part of this.
Mhm.
It's like, you can have the opportunity and let people, Africans, black folks, whoever, come through here, and you can be that point,
Yeah.
right? But for you to, like, control who
Right.
sees them, where they're seen, how much they're
Yes.
being paid, like, it has to go directly. They're not incapable
Right,
of doing their
exactly.
own work, their own artistry,
Right.
and having that control over it is just another form of just not letting go of
Right.
and not giving into the appreciation, but leaning more into the appropriation part.
Right, and identifying with it somehow as if you are part of
Have
this.
ownership.
And have ownership. And that's just...
And I think people have a hard time with, like, well, how do I help? Like, how do I love the culture so much, and I just want to bring it here, and I just want to be those people who are like, who they know that it's open and free here. I think that's confusing for people. I think that, black folks come in here and they don't want to navigate this place.
Right.
It comes off as toxic immediately.
Right.
It comes off as very, very a place that's super unsafe. So yeah, having someone help you navigate through and find out where can you perform, what's going to get you the biggest crowds, managing in that way is one thing, but controlling how it gets done and where it gets done and continually to do so. And to make sure that when they want to bring friends in, it goes through you. No,
Right.
no, you've
Right.
shown them the way. Now let go.
Right.
They can do it now.
Yeah.
Like, we can get it done. Showing us the way. Thank you. You did your part,
Right.
and now you can enjoy.
Right.
Now you can appreciate because now you have no part in it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And you're
Yeah.
not benefiting from it in any way except for to watch it go down in the most natural state that it can.
Right.
And if you want to help defend it having its own space.
Right.
That's the whole thing. I don't know what it is about white folks who want to have their name on it too. The appropriation part where I think that people get confused with the appreciation is that I think it's really simple. There's this one simple key for me.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of, it's not simple, but there's a lot of, like, intertwining, stuff that happens.
Yeah.
But I think if you are benefiting monetarily,
Yes.
you are appropriating it.
Right. Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's real
Period.
simple.
Yeah.
If you are benefiting, and that means monetarily is how I always look at it, but
Right.
it's really benefiting in lots of ways.
Right.
It can be fame, it can be notoriety,
Yes.
it can be, publicity, it can
Yep.
be
Just cultural approval or societal approval.
societal approval.
Because so yeah, I was thinking about this in regards to black hairstyles, like natural
I was
black
just gonna go-
hairstyles,
yes.
and how right now in this moment there are some laws trying to be passed so that black people are not discriminated against for wearing their natural hair in
Right.
the workplace and at school.
Yeah.
That's right now happening.
Yeah.
So then if white people are wearing cornrows and then getting attention for it and being seen as like stylish or edgy and they have no problems, there's no discrimination happening,
No.
that's unfair. That's theft, cultural theft is
That's
the way that I'm
appropriation.
seeing it.
Yeah.
So that part for me seems really obvious as well, although I don't think that it is. I mean,
It's not obvious
I don't think
for
it
people.
is, but like now when I think about it that way though, like that's how I'm trying to break it down in conversation, I feel like, because also looking at indigenous people of this country,
Right.
like we were talking about before, there's this historical, I mean, black people too, it's a violent historical context
Right.
that you have to take into account with these things, like Native American boarding schools where they cut their hair and wouldn't allow them to
Burn
practice
their
their
lips.
religion. Yeah.
Yep.
Not with their religion, but their sacred ceremonies.
Practices, yeah, ceremonies, yeah.
Yeah, so and then now people are wearing headdresses or burning sage in ceremonies, and they're doing that without thinking about the context, as I said.
Yeah,
and,
you gotta understand it's historical and it's violent.
Right, and it's alive now. Like genocide, like when we're talking about that, we're talking about genocide
Yeah.
and slavery and terrorism by
Right.
white people
Yeah.
of the indigenous people and
Yeah.
black people in this country. So
when people are like, well, it
Yeah.
wasn't me, it's not, I don't believe it, I'm
Right.
not there, it's really like, that's not the point.
mm-mm.
Okay, let's go back to it's not about you.
Right.
But at the same time, like, I think that it's really something that we have to understand, that like you have to remember historically violent.
Yes.
Right? And
yes.
I actually just did a talk at a
And
child care.
current
Yeah, and
violence.
there's current violence.
I mean, there's the school to prison pipeline. There's all kinds of things that we can put out as like statistical evidence. It's not just an opinion. Like there is violence against people happening to this day.
Yeah. So we had a comment from Amy. Hey, Amy, who was saying important conversation to have, appreciation versus appropriation, especially in the Pacific Northwest. It's everywhere, girl.
Yeah.
But yes, thank you for that. So it's what was I just saying? I'm like oh my gosh, like I literally just was like, what?
Yeah. Let's see, cultural appropriation.
Well, we can just keep going with that. I'll come back. Okay. I went to a daycare, and we were talking about the violent history, and I do diversity talks, like conversations, 2-3 hours, 4 hours long. These conversations are typically need to be days long. You can totally, there's people all in this community, a few really good folks that I would consider to do a diversity trainings that are 8 to 10 to 2 hours long, or 12, and sometimes 4 or 5 days, 6 sessions, those type of things by Johnny Lake. There's a lot of folks. I do smaller ones. I just did one for 2 hours, and there was a lot that we talked about, and it was really good, but I was like, oh my God, this is like not a 2-hour conversation. Like this could be forever. And so we were able to crush it down into 2 hours, and it was really fun. And so when I was doing that particular talk, I brought up in that talk that, the talk that they talk about, like we have the talk at home, where black folks have the talk,
right,
and then white folks don't have that same talk, right? The talk meaning that we talk about at kids at a very young age about the violence that they will ensue when they enter society as a black-skinned person. You don't have to be dark. You don't have to be with nappy hair. You don't have to be anything. You just have to be recognized as black. And we start having that conversation with our boys and girls at as young as 4, and it's not because we're ensuing racism. We are protecting our children from society. So if you talk about the historical violence, and just so that you guys understand, most kids who live in a scenario like we do in the Pacific Northwest hear the N-word by 2nd grade. They're called that by 2nd grade. So, and that's not the first time. It can be as early as kindergarten on a regular statistical basis. So when we're having those conversations when they're 4, it's so that they can have a sense of community, that they are backed up by their family, that this is not an experience that is on their own, that we have experienced it ourselves, that we know exactly what to do when it happens. They understand and they are prepared, because it will happen before they turn 7. So just get that in your mind, that talk is happening at home for every black family in the Pacific Northwest and across the country, because it just changes context. You talk about the police, or you talk about school, and you talk about the teachers. We talk about how we have to behave and what you need to do in case you're in this scenario, because it's going to come up and your life can be threatened. This is a talk we have. Every full black family who's identifying as black in this country is having that talk. I will put that out there to tell me that you're not. And if you're not, you're probably bypassing and ignoring some real safety issues that your kids are going through. So anyway, to say that, we had this conversation, and for people to grow up, understand, again, I have to say it over and over again, historically violent. Historically violent. We are having to teach our kids in 2020 that historical violence is at our doorstep. So that means, even if it wasn't you, we are living in a structural context that keeps that historical violence in place.
Right.
We have warning signs. We see it when we go out. We're like, oh, we know where that is. We know that KK building. I remember when back in the day when that was happening over there, when that person was hung over there. That's within my lifetime.
Right.
You know, and I'm early 40, like, right? So I just want, when we talk about white folks and we're talking about that conversation where people are like, well, what am I supposed to do? It's not about me. It's the historical context.
Yeah, right. It doesn't
You're
matter.
representing something.
Right.
You, whether you want to or not. So that means you have to actively work against it.
Yes.
Because the building that you and I walk into, the bank, you know, the real estate, the loans, the school, we go to college together, we're not getting the same, the playing field is not the same.
Yeah.
So you were talking about obstacles. Like,
yeah,
I can't,
we were talking about that earlier.
Can you remember the context in which we were?
I think so. I think, like, what's important to recognize, I feel as well, and thank you for everything you just said. I think that's really important.
Just trying to throw it out there.
Yes. There's also you touched on this, but structural oppression and the unequal power dynamics that exist in our day-to-day existence as people in the USA. So, like,
so I don't want to cut you off, but at the same time, because you're so heightened in this, and I give you all props like I did before, but you're so evolved in the idea of putting yourself in a position where, like, okay, this is not my place.
Right.
I would love for you to see if you could break it down for people who are, like, living their life and they're super happy. And they, like I said, they've dated black folks and they're and it's not. I don't see it.
Right.
Like, where are some examples that are, like, every day that you walk, like, you were telling me about something, you're, like, looking and you're going, oh, like, you're, like, barely can take watching it because it's just, like, so.
Yeah, what was that?
I mean, even if it is the dancing, when we were talking about dancing on stage, or whether or not it's just seeing, you know, white folks being defensive about conversations or just belittling black experience that you've heard these conversations around.
Right.
I think that, I don't know, y'all. I don't know that white folks understand what's coming out of their mouth and what it sounds like.
I don't think so. I can't speak for them, but when I'm hearing it, I often think, like, I'm not sure that they're aware how this sounds to me.
How can you be more aware? How can they be more aware? Like, I can tell you as a black woman what you would do, but as a white woman, you understand the blinders.
Right. And I want to say, too, like, I have my own blind spots, and I always will, I'm guessing, like, no matter how much work I do because of being white. So there are these racial dynamics that make it so I've been taught not to see these things. So it's really frustrating for me. I have that question myself, too, where I'm like, I really welcome any type of input from people around me if I am doing something that's coming across as racist. Because I think that's the place to start, honestly. I mean, aside from educating yourself, and there are lots of amazing books and resources out there, but just being open when that may be brought to you and having humility around it.
Right.
I think humility is maybe the biggest one, or just a desire to be in integrity and to try and have awareness around it.
I think it's really hard when people, it's kind of like, can you tell the fish of the water? Like,
right.
One
That's
of those
exactly
things.
What it is.
Yeah.
Because we're not taught to think about ourselves in racial terms.
Not at all.
That's a big one, I think, is because, like, even having somebody point out that a person is white makes them already feel defensive.
Right.
Because if we're thinking about race, we're thinking about black people. Honestly, if I'm honest, like, you don't have to think about race as a white person until, like, if someone says something about race, you automatically are thinking somebody that's not white.
Yes.
But
immediately.
We also are part of this whole system.
Right.
Like, whiteness only exists because blackness exists. Like, that's how it was created on purpose. Like,
and what's really funny, as black folks, we do the same thing because we're conditioned to white supremacy.
Right, we all are.
With the idea of, like, when they say something and they don't say, you know, we know, it's like, they don't say the race when they're describing.
Right, whiteness is the default.
Right. So we know. So when they don't say the race, we're like, oh, please don't be black. Please don't be black. You know what I mean?
I saw that.
Okay, I know. It's just like, please don't say it as a black man. Please don't say, because it's like, we're just waiting, you know? Right. And as soon as they say it, because it's a default, it's like a default. If it's not mentioned, then they're white, right? And so, and everything else is other.
Everywhere. That's in literature, that's in movies, that's in the media. It's just everywhere. We're saturated with it from birth.
Yes.
So yes, that's the piece that I think people just miss completely, white people, unless they're actively searching for that, internally and externally.
Yes.
And when we have these conversations, it's like they don't, like those big pieces, those are just huge puzzle pieces that are missing. If you're not able to see that, then it's really hard to pinpoint other racist beliefs that are operating within our whole system. Like,
exactly.
And there's an inherent racial bias that I am aware is going to pop up internally because that's just the way it is. And I think there's a big problem with white people equating racism with being a bad person, because like,
yes, oh my god,
that's why people are so scared to talk about it, because like, and I will say personally, that was an issue for me for a long time.
Right.
A long time where I knew that shit was sorry, I knew that things were not right.
yeah.
Like structurally and systemically in this country that we live in, and I didn't know how to address it without addressing that part of feeling like if I'm like unconsciously thinking these things and I notice them, that means I'm a bad person.
Right.
And I don't think that is true anymore. Like, I really think that you can be a good person at heart and still notice these things that we didn't agree to learn these things either.
Right. It's not like you're walking around with KKK
No.
and you are tying up black
Not
folks
at
and you're
all.
not, and most decent human beings would understand why that's a bad
Right.
thing. You know what I mean? Most decent human beings.
Right.
There's plenty of human beings that totally don't understand why that's a problem either. You know, there is Black Lives Matter for a reason, right? And there's white folks going, but wait, yeah. So that's a thing too. But at the same time, like what you're saying, when white folks you have that opportunity to just look, it doesn't mean everyone here in this country who has a power dynamic, who is benefiting from the structure, is racist.
Right.
It's not you're not necessarily malice, but you got to understand that people of color, all the people of color, and black folks know that.
Right.
So we're trying to decide, what type of racist are you?
Right.
You know what I mean?
And how racist do you know that you are?
How racist are you?
That's
How
what I'm
racist
thinking
are
about.
you? Yeah, and do you know? And are you malice, or are you violent? Are you dangerous?
Right.
You know, and people who pass for whatever biracial culture that they are in, and they can pass for one or the other, they know the other side of the conversation.
Right.
I feel like, because I grew up here, I know white folks better than they will ever know me. You know what I mean?
Because we're the dominant culture.
I'm inundated.
So black people and people of color are forced to learn that this culture, the white culture, so that you can survive. It's
right.
The way I see it.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
You know, I'll correct you if you're wrong.
Thank you.
No, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
it's the truth. It's like, that's the reality. So if someone tells you, hey, dude, that was out of line, and you're being racist.
Right.
Please understand that we have a perspective that is showing you in that moment.
Right.
Stop, it's kind of like that stop, drop, and roll. It's like, stop, drop what you're doing and listen. Like, take a breath and listen for a moment.
Right.
And the truth of it is, the violent contextual past is so important, because when someone comes across enough to be like, hey, this is not okay. Like, this is a breach of our agreement of like, I'll be quiet and you'll be quiet.
To not talk about it.
Yes. Right?
And that takes so much courage.
And it's not
you
anger.
don't know how people are going to react.
Right. It's not necessarily anger.
No, it's not. But it's perceived as that because
Yes.
it makes white people feel unsafe to
Yes.
have these discussions when you're not physically unsafe.
You're not physically unsafe.
No.
You're not anything unsafe.
Right.
Matter of fact, the cops could be called and you're
Right.
still not gonna go to jail. It'll be me.
Right.
So don't worry.
Right.
Right? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, let's just be real.
Yeah.
So that's the whole truth about it. Like, you can't ignore those things that are historically truths.
Right.
They're becoming facts. They
Right.
are factual in my life.
Right.
You know what I mean? Those
Right.
things are not negotiable.
Yes.
Like, I can't negotiate
That's the
them.
whole point, is because, that's what we've been seeing since the last episode we did, is people trying to negotiate these statistical facts that we're bringing up
Right.
that are not up for discussion.
Yeah.
Like, they're literally, if you're trying to prove that facts are wrong, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Like,
Ask yourself.
that's a chance to just look internally and just stop everything.
Right.
That's how I feel.
I know, and I think about white folks who are so used to just doing what they do. Like, I think about Native American folks here in Eugene quite a bit, because we're living like on native land, and like some people understand it, some people don't. We've used some of the names, we don't pronounce them the way they should be. We renamed Spencer Butte and Skinner's Butte
Mm-hmm.
after two raging racist, and they have Native American names to them. Like and so it's just, it becomes one of those things where it's like we just normalize it. I'm a part of that too.
Yeah.
The issue about it when they talk about like black folks being racist in that way, I don't have any power, and so racism
Right.
cannot be. You cannot be racist without the dynamic
Right.
of power.
That's the unequal power dynamic that we're talking about with the cultural appropriation. As
Exactly.
Well. Yeah.
That goes with the cultural appropriation as well. Like
Right.
if you are able, that's another key to appropriating. Like, do you have more power?
Right.
Are you like quote unquote saving the other the other culture, or are you helping it be seen? Or are you all of those things are all power dynamics and not yours to do.
Right. And why are they not being seen? I know we talked about this on our last episode, but like, why are there all white people representing African dance here? Like, think about those deeper
Or salsa,
questions.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, or you know,
The thing you
Rumba
feel
or
like you need
swing.
to perpetuate.
Yeah, you know, swing dancing wasn't white either.
Right.
So it's like, I mean, you know,
Rock
let's
and
just be
roll.
real, it wasn't white.
Uh-uh.
And I haven't seen black swing dancers in like a minute. You know what I mean? And so, but yes, you know, to all of that. Like,
Yeah.
yes, of course the train comes right now.
I'm getting trained.
We have a train.
So funny.
So I think that at this point, like, these conversations can go, and we started 10 minutes later, so we're going
Okay.
10 minutes over.
Nice.
So I think it's really important that people also understand that, like, these conversations that black folks are willing to have. There was someone that watches me. She suggested an article that I read to have a podcast on it, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And the podcast, and we will have this podcast, but we will not do it the way the article did, because I read that article and I was like,
Which one?
missed an opportunity.
Oh, damn.
It's a talk to white women about what they've learned about having friendships with black women.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I was like, yeah, we could definitely do that. So then I read the article and I was like, wah, wah. Right? It was like so whack. And then the reason it was so whack was because, like, the friendships that they decided to highlight were so not, like, they weren't actually like real true friends. Like, I could tell as a black woman, I'm like, that black person is not actually
Oh, no.
is not
Was this
actually
a white woman writing it?
I don't know. I think she may have been black, and she actually did say that it was very hard. She said it very hard under what we would consider true friendship to find people who had that. She said it was
Right.
very hard. So I think that out of this 10 examples that she used, maybe 2 or 3 of them actually, to me as a black woman reading them, go, oh, they're actually friends.
Right,
Authentic.
Okay.
And what it was, and people are always, well, I have black friends, I have Native friends, if they have not talked to you, if you guys have not had ugly conversations, ugly cry,
Yeah.
deep or just deep, really painful, deep conversations about race dynamics, you don't have a black friend. You know black people. I'm trying to tell you that. That's across the that's
Right.
across the board. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
If black folks have not told you about their reality, and they feel like you can sit down and have that conversation with them in your own reality, and you guys can hash that out
Right.
every time it comes up.
Yeah.
Trust me, you don't have black friends.
Yeah, the layers are not.
You
obvious.
know some black people, right, who might
Right.
hang out with you and associate with you and
Right.
think that you're really cool.
Yeah.
A friend to the deep friend?
Mm.
No, you don't have them, because that is our reality in
Right.
this United States. And if you can't see it, and you can't appreciate it, and you are constantly trying to qualify it,
Right.
how can you ever really know me?
Right.
How? And you go for it.
Yes.
Go for it.
That just reminded me of something about ooh, I lost it.
Okay, so I'll keep
Yeah,
talking.
keep going. I'll come back to it.
So, I think about the Native folks here, like a country fair. I like people walking by, and they're like everyone like at one year there was like, you know, women dressed in samba, and they're all white. There's another group of, you know, capoeira going on, and then you got the drum circle, which is like a absolute disaster. And then you've got, like, you know, all the vendors are selling Native stuff, and there's the Willamette Valley Native painting all over it. That's all inter-tribal. That's all mixed together. And it's not like Confederate, because they didn't do it. So it's like a bunch of folks. And so I'm looking, and it's always people who are like, They want to make sure it stays alive.
Yeah.
So that type of racism it's like that intention is a good intention. If the impact is so horrible and devastating,
Right.
and that's where the sad part in Pacific Northwest folks is that they won't stop themselves. Because they just are like, this is what we do.
Right.
How else will it be seen? It's like they got this martyrdom about it, where it's like, if someone else doesn't do it, who will?
Right.
And
It's
I will
gotta be
sacrifice
me,
myself to do it.
yeah.
I will do this. And it's like, hold on. I just know that there's a Native artist.
Right.
You know what I mean?
There's gotta be.
There's gotta be at least one Native artist who we can pull up and we can support and we can pay. You know what I mean?
Right.
And we don't have to do this fair until it's right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't have to do it until it's right. It's like that urge of like, I want it the way I want it.
Right.
I want it right now.
Right.
I want it this way.
Right.
It's, again, still a power
Yeah.
play.
And we've been doing it this way forever, so we're just gonna keep doing it.
Right.
Like,
and well, we need
we
to
can't
have
stop
some money
now.
from it, because how else will it continue?
Right.
Boom. Right there, you
Boom.
just crossed appreciation into
Mhm.
appropriation.
Right.
And so it's just like that intention that we have as good liberals. And it's just not, the impact is devastating.
Right.
And this Willamette Valley, this Pacific Northwest, is just a blaring example of the devastation.
Mhm.
You know, and I don't want someone who DM'd. Did you think of your thought?
No, I'm like trying, but I'm
Okay.
listening to what you're saying.
I
too.
know. So one of the DMs that you got was like, playing the victim role.
Yeah.
Mm.
Right.
I want to address that.
Yes, please.
Because I don't think that I want people to understand. Like, I get to say what I want to say, and Black folks can say what they want to say.
Yeah.
And not be victims.
Right.
Like, we can say that this is not right. We can
Yes.
say that this is annoying. We can say that this is something that we carry on our backs all the time,
Right.
because when we go to work, we can't say it
Right.
because, like, inclusion isn't real. So I
Uh-huh.
can't actually be as Black as I want to. I have to lower my voice, and I have to wear my hair
Mhm.
braided in a fashionable way that is acceptable to the person that I work
Professional.
with. Professional way, which means it can't have color. It can't
Right.
be, Bantu knots. Anything that's like, anything that's culturally my own.
Mhm.
I have to do it in a way that's acceptable.
Yeah.
So I'm not being Black. We're code switching constantly.
Right.
Right? So when I come to a space like my show,
Mhm.
and I get to say what I want, if you see what I'm saying as a victim, it's interesting, because I'm the leader I'm the person in the front of
Right.
your job. Like, I'm a leader in my position. Like,
Yeah.
we are Black folks are bankers. We own banks. We're curing cancer.
Right.
This is not a victim status that you're
Right.
hearing.
And
This
I
is a-
never have heard you claim that or even allude to that.
No,
Like, that's
'cause
not
I'm not
what
a
I
vic-
get from this
No,
at all.
but
So
that-
that's what concerned me about that comment.
But what is that? Why would that
Yeah.
person? Why would he see me as a Black woman, or any Black people speaking
Right.
their truth, as a victim?
Right.
Like, that's the whole
Right.
idea.
By
Of, like,
pointing out injustice, does that make you a victim?
that
of it?
is
Like,
what it is. That's
the
what they're saying.
literal
Oh, you're
translation?
speaking up. Oh, you're speaking up against it.
So what do you? So if you weren't a victim, you'd just be silently just fucking marching. Oh.
Yeah, you'd be silently
Yes.
marching along.
Marching along.
Yes, that's exactly what you'd be
Ooh,
doing.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's what they prefer.
Right.
That's what they
'cause it
prefer.
maintains the status quo.
Right. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So that's what they prefer. So unfortunately, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be comfortable for everyone. And I think
Right.
that the better yet that you are comfortable, the better yet that you are uncomfortable, the better it is for you. You are actually learning in that space.
You have to be uncomfortable to learn, and that's what I want to direct. I mean, that's how I try to direct my own education. Is like,
Right.
if I'm uncomfortable, that's a good thing. That's
Yeah.
not a bad thing. Like,
Yeah.
we're taught to avoid that in this society, but it's not.
Yeah, I think about all the cultures that I've lived in all my life.
Yeah.
Like, I've lived, in Central America. I've lived in Hawaii. I've lived, I've scuba dived. So I've not lived, but I've visited and stayed time. Through all the Central American countries, Fiji, Puerto Rico, which is American, but and I think about whether or not if I had ever, with my privilege that I have somehow seeped into my skin by living in the United States. Living in the Pacific Northwest, because I'm a different type of Black person than the Black folks across the country, where I feel like I have more voice, then a lot of black people like, we don't do that. And I'm
Right.
like, you can if you want. And they're like, no, don't do that. Like, that's super white of you. You know what I mean? And I'm like, is it? And they're like, yeah, your white is coming right on out. You know? And I'm like, I didn't know. So like, it's because I'm up here in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So I wonder if when I lived in Hawaii, or if I lived in Costa Rica, the reason, I wonder how I think because I'm black, I'm viewed differently, obviously. I remember having white friends in Costa Rica and be like, oh, we can't go there because we got Blondie with us and this is going to cause all kinds of issues.
Right.
So, like, let's not do that. And they'd be like, yeah, you're right, we shouldn't go. You know, they would know. But the level of appreciation for cultures, you know, we learned hula, you know.
Right.
I never came home and tried to teach it. Like, I never took money for it. You know what I mean? I never said I'm a hula master.
No.
You know, I've never, you know, and people in Hawaii loved for us to do it. They were, you know, they loved for us to participate.
Right.
We weren't traditional,
Yeah.
so they would not put us on a stage. You know what I mean? So it's like, and they also hold their culture very tight, and rightfully so.
Right, it's directly connected.
Yeah,
to
you know,
their
and
spirituality.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, and most are.
Right.
But so anyway, it's one of those ideas of like the ownership. Check your ownership of things.
Right.
I don't know how else to say it.
I don't either. Yeah, I think that's really on point.
Did you ever catch your thought?
No, I
dang
really,
it.
we'll have to save it for part 3. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's totally it right there.
Yeah.
Like,
So
why do you need to take anything from it or identify with it?
yeah,
To enjoy it.
to enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know.
And if you love it, like, why wouldn't you want to just allow it to be what it is? Right?
An artist. Why
Controlling
can't
it.
we be artists? Why can't you create?
Right.
Like, create,
Right.
not take something else
Right.
and smooch off, like, but actually create.
Mhm.
And the thing is, like, an artist's mind is like, oh, we're inundated, it's all over, we're being inspired.
Yeah.
So then you spit out someone else's culture or something that's culture-esque, and you go, it's not that culture, but you're like, it looks just like it.
Right.
Because you use different colors, or because you put a turtle on top of the, like,
Oh
what?
my God.
It's the
Yeah.
same thing, and you know it. So I want
Yeah.
to implore artists, dancers, you know, everyone, poets, stay in your lane
Yeah.
and create.
Yeah.
Like, we would love to hear what you have to say.
Right.
Like, honestly, like what you actually can create out of your experiences,
Right.
not of what you saw and what moved you
Yeah.
from their experiences.
Yes.
You know?
And one thing I've been thinking about a lot is my own racial heritage and my own ancestry, and like connecting with the art and the culture of my ancestors.
Italy?
Yeah.
Do you want to go
I don't
visit?
know.
Because I will go with you.
Definitely do. I'm broke as a
I know,
joke. I know.
Me
Trying to
too.
not
It's a
cuss.
fantasy.
But at some point, yes, I definitely want to go there, and like, yeah, that part I just think is important for me as a white person, because I am so inspired by so many cultures, and it would be really great for me to know my own.
Yeah.
Because I think that's something, when white people became white, we lost that.
Yeah.
We don't have a culture besides
Right.
this weird dominant culture that we have here.
Yeah, that you
like
created.
as far as like indigenous, like art and dance. And
Because
food.
truthfully, your culture here, in the United States, is a culture of oppression.
A
And if you want
colonizer culture,
a colonizing
yeah.
culture,
Right.
Yeah. So if you really want to know who you are,
You have to go pretty far back at
Yeah.
this point. That's
Yeah.
how I feel anyway.
Yeah, there's a whole
that's
course.
Kind of a new thought process.
But there's a
just, like,
whole
how
course at
can
the
I
university.
find that? Yeah.
but there's a
For
whole
myself.
course at the University of Oregon
Okay.
that says how and when white became white.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I've learned historically about all of that, but it's more like, for me, it's like about my roots, personal roots,
Yeah.
and like, how can I be inspired by those things
Right.
as well? And,
Right.
And maybe that can come through in my art in a more authentic way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
More to think about.
More to think about. Okay, and that would be, think how rich that would be.
Yeah.
Like, we could actually learn Scottish stuff. And we
Right?
could
I
learn
know.
like Irish
I
stuff.
know,
I have a lot of Irish in my bloodline.
Me
I don't know
too,
anything
me
about
too.
Ireland.
Yeah. And the Pixies and like the fairies and stuff. I mean, the Pixies were a whole nother tribe of their own.
See, I don't know anything about
Yeah,
that.
the
Right?
I think they're called the Pigs.
I'm over
Yeah.
here just trying to live. I don't know
I
anything
know,
about that.
I know.
Like,
I know, I'm like, there's a lot more to learn. That's how I feel.
Exactly. There's so
more to
much.
learn.
The whole
Yeah.
world. We don't have to take from each other like this, right? Okay, you guys, that is our hour. How about that? It just goes right flying by.
Yeah.
We will definitely have more. If you guys have more to say and want to and have more conversations, please, because that's how it brought up.
reach out.
Yeah, it's how it brought up part 2 because there was so much more to say.
Yeah.
And we will do it again, and we'll be happy to do it again. So I want to give a shout out to KEPW LP 97.3 in Eugene, Oregon. This is the radio station that I'm aired on at 11 o'clock on Sundays. It's a Piecework Independent Community Radio, and it also streams online at kepw.org. And that will be that for the radio portion of the show. Thanks, and tune in again next week. And so as far as our Facebook audience, same thing, same. Except we will be here next week. I am going to try to add on a YouTube page next week or so. So I'm going to try to do it on YouTube. I might just switch it all the way over from Facebook to YouTube. It'd be nice if you guys left me a message to know if you would rather watch it on YouTube or rather watch it here or rather watch it on Instagram. Because I really don't.
A good point.
Yeah, because I think that Facebook might be a little limiting. So I want to make sure that the conversations are getting out far reaching. Also, I want to consider my Patreon. If I can be supported, if you can support me and my work and this podcast, we can get this up and off the ground.
Yes.
Take it to having conversations even further in the Northwest and with more people, and have guests come down that I can pay for their time, which would be really good. We could get some good folks in here. Donations are as small as $5 and it goes monthly. So I appreciate that always. Nell, thank you so much for being here, girl. I will have her on a lot. I'll have her on
and
way
I'm trying
more.
to remember what I was thinking.
I know.
I'm so mad that I forgot. It had to do with white women and black women being friends, and a comment that I had. So I'll
I'll come
back with more.
I love that. White women and that is a conversation. Thank you for the suggestion, Capricia, who she suggested that, and I want to next week. I'm going to give a shout out to my Patreons. I also want to say that we will be doing episodes for our Patreon listeners only, but since they're paying a little extra and we want to do some bonus stuff and kind of give that, so that might be some incentive to support there too. But Capricia gave us that suggestion about white women and black women friendships and black-white friendships. I think we are going to definitely get into that more, and I will definitely have you on as a guest. I'll have someone else on as a guest who isn't actually as versed in black culture, but is a very nice person, and we're friends. But we will have those. Our friendship is growing, so I think I might add her to the group too, and maybe another black woman, so we can kind of have that group conversation. So stay tuned, y'all. Thank you so much for coming on in. Do you have anything else you want to throw out there now?
Good.
Good?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys. My finger's been all on your face. I appreciate you for being patient. Okay, bye now.